across, it's not such a good lecture, right? Sensory. This is to do with hearing, seeing. This is our sentience. If you could not hear me, it would not be such a good lecture. If there was a lot of noise outside, for example. Biotic. Is there anyone here who's dead? You see, we need life in order to have a lecture like this. Physical. The air takes vibrations from my vocal cords and sends it through the room and transmits it to your eardrums. In a vacuum, you would not hear me. Okay, that's the lingual aspect, depends on all these, but there's a social aspect. I could just read my notes, but reading wouldn't be so good. You get the information, but it's better if I relate to you as human beings. Economic, I've got limited time. Aesthetic, a lecture should be interesting and fun, enjoyable, rather than boring, right? Juridical, a lecture should do justice. I mean, I could fill a lecture full of jokes so you enjoy it, but not actually do justice to the topic. Ethical, a good lecture gives more than just what is due. Gives something extra. Pistic, the Greek word pistis meaning faith, vision, commitment, deep faith, not head faith. What is the vision of the lecture? Sometimes you've been at lectures where perhaps the lecturer does not really believe, they're only just delivering a topic. A lecture where the lecturer is passionate is better than one where the lecturer is not. So you can see anything can exhibit all the aspects, and that includes what we do in ICT. Dwyveard tried a Christian philosophy. I rather like to label him as the best philosopher we've had of everyday life. And if the Christian faith is a key to how reality really is under God, then we don't need to call it a Christian philosophy. We can call it a philosophy of reality. He has helped me affirm, critique and enrich in several fields. In computer science, artificial intelligence, in relation to data, information and knowledge, in information systems development, ICT use, ICT and society. Now we don't have time to go into all of these, so I would like to know which ones you would like. There are no people from computer science here, right? Is there anyone from computer science? There are some other, because I could go into computer science, but only if people... Who would like me to go into computer science? Let's have some votes. Nobody! Right, who would like to see what I do about artificial intelligence? Okay. The difference between data, information and knowledge, how many? Okay, a couple, 2 or 3. Information systems development in the real world, how many? None. Information systems use in the real world? None. ICT and society? Lots. Okay, let's, I think go to artificial intelligence first. It's a little bit shorter. Now, the challenge of artificial intelligence is the question, is a computer like a human? And the debate has been going on for 50 or 60 years. John, I wonder if it's possible to pop the door open, because there are a number of people feeling very hot. And a draft coming through, I think, will be very nice. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, lots. Thank you. I'm okay, because I've got open windows here, but perhaps you could open the windows at the back. The debate has gone on for 60 years and is still unresolved. However, it takes 3 forms. There's the debate, computer is material, but human is mental. This is the body-mind debate in psychology. Or computer is mundane and human is sacred. John Searle takes that line not using those words. For example, he says that the computer operates by physical causality, humans operate by biological causality, which is somehow special, somehow magical. He doesn't use that term. Something on a different level. And finally, the computer is determined. It's a machine, but humans are free. And there's debate on all of these, yes or no. You know, could the material give rise to the mental? Could the mundane give rise to the sacred, or the sacred to the mundane? Could what is determined give rise to what is free? Alan Newell discusses that. Does this echo anything? Think of Western philosophy over the last 2,500 years. First of all, the Greeks thought in terms of form versus matter. The Hebrews in terms of creation, fall, redemption, and these were combined to produce the ground motive of the medieval period called nature and grace, or sacred secular, which eventually evolved into nature and freedom ground motive. And these are various philosophers of those eras. The separation of object and subject, of is from ought, you know, being from norms, thing from thought, by various philosophers, is an illustration of this, an outworking of this. Herman Dooyeweerd integrates these by not going through these dualistic versions, but going directly back to creation, fall, redemption. Not as a worldview, but as a presupposition, a philosophical, not theological, but philosophical presupposition. I could spend more time on this, but I need to move on. The grounds of artificial intelligence debate fall into, well, the mind versus body, material versus mental debate is a form of this. The mundane sacred debate is a form of this. The machine versus free or non-determined is a form of this. What Dooyeweerd argued is that we can never resolve these debates while presupposing them, while presupposing these dualisms. And that's why the debate in artificial intelligence has never been resolved. So that's a way of understanding the debate. How can we, and that in itself is a contribution to see these religious ground motives as contributing to the inability of artificial intelligence to resolve its debate. We can go further with Dooyeweerd's aspects. A human functions as subject in every aspect. Animals function as subject up to the sensitive aspect. Plants function as subject up to the biotic aspect. And material functions as subject up to the physical aspect. In all other aspects, these function as object. So, for example, when an animal sees, let's say a bee sees a flower, the plant, the flower, isn't seeing, but it is being seen by the bee. When a plant uses soil for its sustenance, the soil isn't eating, but it is being eaten or uses biological sustenance. Now you think about computer and ask the question, can a computer understand? Computer in itself is non-living thing. It's silicon, plastic, copper, everything else. So it can function as subject only up to the physical, and in all others it functions as object. This helps us answer the question, can a computer understand, in the following way. I'm going to put up a number of different statements. First, the computer emits light and electric charge. That's true. It functions as subject in the physical aspect. The computer reacts to signals. It's That's a statement within the sensitive aspect. Computer stores data is a statement in the analytic aspect. The computer processes information is a statement in the formative aspect. The computer tells me my contacts, or lists my contacts, is a statement in the lingual aspect. And the computer keeps me in touch, or my mobile phone keeps me in touch, is a statement that's meaningful in the social aspect. But all these, the computer is operating as object, not subject. So we have two answers to the computer. Can a computer understand? Yes and no. Yes, if we assume a user that is the subject of this object functioning. No, if we don't assume a user. So that separates out the debate and helps us think through and clarify the issues in the debate. And I think that's a genuine contribution to knowledge. So we are affirming the kinds of functioning in each aspect. However, we're critiquing the existing debate because we're saying that the grounds for debate were confused because they did not recognize the religious nature of their presuppositions. And we can enrich it by thinking in terms of subject or object functioning, how it depends on the aspect, and it provides basis for resolving the debate. And in this book, Philosophical Frameworks for Understanding Information Systems, Chapter 5, you can see this in more detail. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give this, tomorrow I'm going to give this to the faculty to put in the library. So it can be in the university library, okay? Okay, let's go to ICT and society. Before we do, any questions about that artificial intelligence? Question?
Yeah, yesterday maybe I heard that the Turing test is succeeding.
Turing test?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Turing, I'll put this up here. AI Turing test. I'll just capture the questions now and answer them in the questions period, which is coming up in 5 or 8 minutes. ICT and society. The challenge of this is that ICT use and design affects society, and society affects ICT. It's what's called a structurational relationship. Anthony Giddens coined that term, and he also said there are different structures of norms, normative structures, power structures, and meaning structures in society that affect what we do and which are affected by what we do. How do we understand this? Can a Christian thinker make any contribution? Well, if we think of Dooyeweerd's aspects, first of all, Giddens' norms, power and meaning are almost identical, if you look at them, with Dooyeweerd's last 3 aspects: juridical, ethical, epistic. Ethical, by the way, is not good and bad, it's generosity. And power means I'm being mean, I want to control you. So, there are these structures. Are there perhaps any others? We can enrich it like that by thinking, let's think if there's any other structures. Aesthetic structures, economic structures, social structures that influence ICT. Economic structures? Of course. Dooyeweerd opens up. Skuren's liberating vision is something else that I found useful. And Egbert Schuurman, a Dutch statesman and thinker, he's saying that technology should be guided not by its own aspect, which is technology for technology's sake, or technological determinism, which is the formative and lingual aspect, but by all the other aspects. So it, if you like, it should serve the social, economic, aesthetic, juridical, ethical, and epistic aspects. And that's how we should use and guide technology in society. One of my students is doing a PhD in idolatry of society, using Bob Krautsbahn's idea of idolatry. He's actually a Hindu, but he's using this Christian idea of idolatry to understand the failure of electronic government projects around the world. We can affirm Giddens' thought of structuration. Partly, I meant to mention in the previous screen that we live in a cosmos, a reality, in which everything is connected, interconnected, and everything affects everything else, often circularly. So ICT affects society, society affects ICT. So we can affirm that, and various other theories. But we can say it's got too few aspects. And we can enrich it by recognizing more aspects and also adding the notion of service, which Giddens lacks. Service, humility, agape love. This is in chapter 8 of my book of Philosophical Frameworks for Understanding Information Systems. Okay, I've been through artificial intelligence and ICT in society. According to the clock, we've got time for one more, and then 15 minutes of questions. But before that, is there any questions about ICT and society? I've been over brief. We'll store them up. Any others about artificial intelligence? Yeah.
Can you explain about the critic?
About?
Critics.
Say it again. Shout it out, I can't hear. I don't hear very well.
Your idea of critique.
Oh, critique!
Yeah. Your idea of affirming, critiquing.
Perhaps I ought to mention that and explain that now. Critique is, you could think of it as criticism, but it might be positive criticism. It's trying to look to see what's wrong and right in ideas. It's distancing myself from the idea and yet understanding it from within. So it's a kind of, it's an interesting thing. It's really what's important in academic life. If you're going to be an academic, if you're going to really be a master of your topic, as opposed to just first degree of your topic, you need to learn to critique. I teach at a secular university, by the way, and I teach master's students. What I find is that the students love this, but I have to, especially those from Hindu and Muslim backgrounds, but I have to first teach them how to be critical thinkers, not just accepting what they are told. I think I've heard that Koreans also need to learn to be critical thinkers. That a lot of Korean students will accept what they've been told because they're looking up to their masters, the professors, and to just accept without questioning honours the professor, the teacher. Same in India. Same in Africa. But I think a teacher is more honoured when he is questioned. Because to question a teacher, not to say, teacher, you're wrong, but to say, teacher, you've said something I don't understand. For example, I don't understand what critique is. I can understand it at one level, but I don't understand it deeper down. I want you to explain it better. I want you, or rather more. That's critique. Critique is to to get to know the subject and look to see what it assumes to be true or false, and also what it presupposes to be meaningful. There's a difference. Do you know the difference between assumption and presupposition? Assumption is to do with what is true. So we might assume that the bus will leave for Pohang at a certain time. It might be true, but it might be false. And if we go with the wrong assumption, we'll miss the bus. But a presupposition is to do with what is meaningful. The bus presupposes that people want to travel. If people do not want to travel, then there will be no buses. So if you were to say, does the bus leave at a certain time, and there are no buses, your assumption is neither true nor false, because it's not even meaningful. The question, have you stopped beating your wife? You know, let's find a husband. Have you stopped beating your wife, really? See? If you say yes, it means you're admitting to having beaten her. If you say no, it means you're still beating her. Right? The presupposition is that you have been beating your wife. See, the question sometimes is not meaningful. That's the difference between presupposition and assumption. And in academic thought, there's a lot of mixing up of this. Have you got a better idea of critique? Have I helped at all? A little bit. Okay. I think it's time to move to the conclusion, and then we can have questions. Conclusion. What I've said is that don't use Bible verses or biblical principles to try and engage with the topic. Christian worldview can motivate us to engage with the topic, but it's not enough for the actual engagement. What we need to engage with extant thought is to find out how to affirm, critique and enrich. And I've used Doivier's philosophy for that. Perhaps other philosophies can help, but I find Doivier is the best. Non-Christian thought. Do not reject or accept it uncritically, but, as I've just said, critically affirm and enrich. The reason is because the cycle of problem identification is often valid, but solutions are often might be distorted. And finally, how is this Christian? We're talking about integrating Christian faith with ICT. I haven't really been giving much that sounds Christian, have I? It's not Christian facts or theories, verses or principles, but it's motivated by a Christian understanding of reality as diverse, as meaningful, as normative, good, that is good, not just neutral. It's in tune with the structure of reality. Let me give you a little story. The physicist Michael Faraday is credited with understanding magnetism. Magnetism was discovered. A thing is that iron is attracted to a magnet. They tried to understand it. The materialists of the time, who did not want to believe in God, tried to theorize this as particles moving between the magnet and the iron. And that theory didn't work very well. Michael Faraday was a Bible-believing Christian, and his faith freed him to think of magnetism as force acting at a distance. The materialists did not allow themselves to think of force acting at a distance because they were scared that if they did, then the Christians and the supernaturalists would win the day. And so they closed down their minds. Michael Faraday was an open-minded person because of his faith, not despite it. Herman Dooyeweerd, I think, has done this for philosophy. Most philosophers try to reduce the number of aspects to a minimum, like 2. You get dualism. Or even 1, you get monism. Or they say there's no such thing as aspects, it's just an infinite soup. And then they don't allow themselves to really take everyday life seriously in its diversity, its meaningfulness, and its normativity. Thinkers today are starting down that line. Philosophers who deal with the life world, from Husserl, Habermas, the existentialists, the phenomenologists, recognize the meaningfulness and normativity is there, but they don't know how to handle it. They try to theorize it in terms of subjective or intersubjective meaningfulness. And they get tied up in knots. I think Dooyeweerd can help in that. And yet, this approach exhibits a humility that challenges. What I find is that non-Christians like it. Both academics and also my students. Muslim and Hindu students love the aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Basden. Now is the time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, herzlich willkommen.
I will deal with this question, the Turing test, in a minute.
Yes. If you have any questions, he will receive all your questions first, and then he will try to give his answers. Good hello, we have here. Okay, please raise your hands, introduce yourself very briefly, and ask your questions. Okay. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for coming all this way. My name is Abraham Lee. I'm in the School of Business and Economics. And my question is, this area is new to me, and it's never occurred to me that we should probe too deeply to understand ICT's role as a Christian. For me, I've always thought of it as equivalent to questioning the Christian understanding of postal service, or the Christian meaning of the bus transportation service. It's a tool, and it could be used for certain aims that we value. It has a utility, and we could achieve our Christian aims through this tool, which is more meaningful than trying to understand, is this Christian, and how do I understand this deeply as a Christian, kind of more abstractly. I don't know if that's very practical from a layman's perspective.
What do you mean, abstract thinking?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it practical?
To be thinking about, is ICT Christian? I don't know what we're supposed to get from that.
Or is ICT Christian? That's the Greek letter chi in Christ. Okay.
And I've noticed in your framework for Duvray that there is I don't know where the psycho aspect of it falls in, where ICT might affect one's perception of self and identity and behavior.
Okay. Any others?
Thank you for your lecture, and my name is Won Kim. My question is very simple. Is it possible that determined one become an undetermined one?
A determined one becoming an undetermined.
Is it possible? What I want to ask is, determined one can, is it possible to determine one can really apply something based on determined process? Like,
So are you meaning that the application might be non-determined, but the operation of the computer might be determined? Is that what you're asking? No, not quite.
is it possible to determine one become an undetermined one?
Okay, that's something that Alan Newell talked about. Yeah, okay. Those are the questions.
My name is Sekou Lee. I'm in the management. And I'd like to ask you, this might have nothing to do with the ICT, but
Okay.
You said something about the genetic modification.
Yeah.
And you said you disagreed to genetic modification not because it was playing God, but it was due to something else.
Yeah.
I'd like to know more about it.
Okay.
your view.
I wanted.
They had made a presentation about GMO, that's why.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then I will give you.
Thank you. Let's go to let's do aspects somewhere. Let's go to the. Okay, I'll just use this to refer to. First of all, the Turing test. Now, the Turing test is more or less that if you are at a terminal connected to a computer, now this was in the days when computers were connected to terminals. So if you were at a terminal connected to a computer and you were able to ask it any kind of questions and it would give you a response. And the thing is, you didn't know whether what the terminal was connected to was a computer or another person at the other end answering your questions. If you couldn't tell the difference, after as much time as you like, if you couldn't tell the difference, whether it was a computer or whether it was a person at the other end, because of the quality of their answers, then the computer, and if it happened to be a computer, then the computer must be like the human. That's a very reasonable test. But it emphasizes, I think, the lingual aspect. It's about information, it's about question and answer. There might be a bit of social aspect there, in that you might ask it something and it would be a joke, and it replies appropriately to that joke. And it might even laugh at the joke you give it. The problem is, that is emphasizing the social aspect, which is the cultural aspect. Let me tell you a joke. Are there any Irishmen here? Okay, you laugh at that. But did you hear about the Irishman who bought a pair of water skis and spent the rest of his life looking for a lake with a slope? A few people laughed, most people didn't. Culturally, you have to understand that. To laugh. So, the Turing test emphasizes the lingual aspect. It also, and other people have criticized it for not taking into account, for example, the bodily aspect. It's assuming that all meaning can come through words on your screen, or perhaps diagrams. So it's a limited test. That is my main comment on it. Does that help? Does that, yeah? What's your response?
Yes.
5 minutes, okay. We've got 5 other questions. Determined, can determined produce undetermined? Alan Newell